Alright guys, now that we have this new document with our grids all set up, we need to talk about how to get some text into it. So this is usually a huge source of frustration for new InDesign users because the text box or the text tool doesn't behave like you would think it would based on maybe previous experience with InDesign, or excuse me, with Illustrator or Photoshop. So if you're coming over and have a lot of experience in Illustrator, it actually may be a bit worse. It's not going to behave like you think it does. So over here in the toolbar is our type tool. And what that's going to allow us to do is make a text frame to then fill with text. So you're going to click and drag, and we'll just make a little grid. You can type in here. And hitting enter returns the line. It doesn't solidify the text. If you hit escape, it will take you back to the direct selection tool. If you are in the direct selection tool and want to edit text, you can double click into it and it will switch over to the type tool. So those two will switch depending on what you need them to do. So this is where the frustration comes in. We can resize this text box and the type within it doesn't respond size-wise. So we can make this big. That's always going to be set at whatever point size we initially created it at. In this case, it's at 12 points over 14 leading. The way to make this larger is to use this drop down, and we'll make this 72.1 inch right now. Again, no link to this. The only time the text box starts to interfere with the text is if the text box is smaller than the text can accommodate. You can see if it gets narrower, it will break into two lines. If it gets smaller, it will disappear entirely, and you'll get this overset warning. So what we want to do is obviously make the text frame larger than the text we're creating. And then if we want to resize this in a more intuitive manner, what we can do is hold down Shift and Command at the same time, and we're using our direct select tool, and that will make it proportionate to the text frame. One thing that might help out even further is if this box were more closely proportioned to the text within it. You can do this manually, but it's a finite line between getting it to break into two and being as small as it possibly can be without doing that. This is a bit of a pain to do. There's a shortcut to that. If you hold down Option and Command and the letter C as in cat key, it will make that as small as possible to encompass the type without having it actually affect the type. So now with that done, if you hold down Shift and Command, there's a much more closer relationship between the text frame and the text within it. Now that gets a little technical, but it's something you'll want to figure out pretty quickly so that it'll behave much more like you expect it to. So that's how to initially import text, or type text in rather, and to resize it. And then of course you can use the type tool drop down up here to select the typeface, or you can also use the character palette over here to select the typeface. Either way, it's still the same palette, and you can experiment with all the typefaces that are in the type mule. You can switch that to Arno, bold italic for instance, and it will reflect that. It will not change the type unless you have it highlighted. You cannot select a new text and have it affect. Only after you start typing will the change take effect. Now it's an Arial, but we didn't have it highlighted and it's split. So if you want to change the existing text, you have to highlight it. If you want to continue typing in something else, you can set your cursor to whatever you want. Zigzag, for instance. And every character after that will be applied to whatever style you put on it. Hopefully that helps, just in general familiarity with the type tool and how it's going to function and how to get it to function better. In the next video, we'll talk about actually laying out stuff according to hierarchy.